Hi, and welcome to Read Becca. I'm excited to wrap up my middle grade March reading with two books. I had a 5-star and a 4-star, both in middle grade fantasy. I read first The City of the Plague God by Sarwat Chadda and narrated by Vikas. This is the newest release in the Rick Presents line. It was also my first 5-star from that line. I've really enjoyed all of the books I've picked up from the Rick Presents line. They're very entertaining. Some of them have really hard-hitting themes, and across the board, they have all been really well written. Some of them are geared toward much younger readers. I would say this one is probably on the older end of middle grade. It's got some complex themes and some darker content. So this story follows Sikandar, who is a Iraqi-American Muslim living in New York City, and he and his family have a halal deli. He works in the deli after school because his older brother has died, and the family are still kind of grieving that loss and trying to get over it, but not really over it yet. And one day he is out cleaning in behind the deli. He runs into two strange characters who are kind of chasing rats, and finds out that these are minions who are hunting for him for the god Nergal, who is a plague god. And the gods and goddesses of this story are from ancient Mesopotamian mythology, as well as the Epic of Gilgamesh meshed in here. And so all of the gods, as it comments in the book, are gods of something and war, pretty much. So they're kind of dark and scary. Ishtar also plays a big role in this book. She actually comes to Sikandar's aid after the plague god sets out the plague starting from the epicenter of the Delhi. And Ishtar and her adopted daughter come and help Sikandar after he escapes from the hospital. His family is stuck there. His parents are in comas and on respirators. So content warnings for that. Obviously that hits close to home, being in a pandemic right now. There are some very similar things going on in this book, despite the fact that it was written before the pandemic started. So Ishtar and her daughter are helping, and we can see that this juxtaposition of the virus and going viral happens with Sikandar, where the school is placing blame on him, and social media at the school is all talking about him, and eventually that gets out to the actual media, and he becomes the plague boy. His face is known, everybody knows who he is. And so there's very smart play on that's really important for our times to show kind of how something can get out of hand on social media. So I think those themes were really excellently executed. Then beyond that, we also have the grief element, where Sikandar is really dealing with some heavy things internally, and considering his love for his brother, his relationship with his brother, how much he didn't know about his brother, that actually comes up quite a bit, and then his feelings of survivor's guilt. I was really surprised to see that play out in a middle grade novel. But so I think this would actually be potentially a good novel to give to a child who's working through those feelings themselves about someone they've lost. So I think those themes were really well handled. I really enjoyed the comedy of this. So the two minions that I mentioned of Nergal, I think they actually have to have been a nod to Croup and Vandemar from Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. They almost are introduced in exactly the same way, and they have kind of a similar temperament. One of them speaks entirely in rhyme, and that was just so fun and entertaining, especially on the audio, hearing Vikas do those two voices. So the comedy was brilliant, and Bellet is very snarky, his little friend that's helping him out, who is Ishtar's, she's a very anti-hero, I guess. She doesn't like him too much, but she grudgingly goes along. And through her and Ishtar, we also have introduced a talking sword who goes all the way back and has been different swords throughout history. So this talking sword is wildly entertaining. He's fabulous. So we have all of these different elements coming together to make just a joy of a book to read. I loved it so much. So highly recommend that one. Absolutely pick it up. And in general, I would really recommend the Rick Riordan Presents line if you're looking for some great middle grade. And then book number 2 was my 4-star read, and that was A Dragon with a Chocolate Heart, and that is by Stephanie Burgis. This book is all about, as it says on the tin, a dragon, Venturine, who is trying to prove herself to her family of dragons, decides to walk out of the mountain and go hunting in order to show that she is a real dragon, and immediately runs into a food mage who tricks her to drink some cursed chocolate that traps her in a human form. And obviously this presents a problem for her because she can't get out of human form, but even more, she doesn't really care anymore because she just wants to get more chocolate. She's obviously never had a chance to try chocolate before as a dragon, and now she is addicted to it. So she starts walking down the mountain and runs into these humans who she learns through that she could in fact get an apprenticeship at a chocolatier if she tried. So she goes down the mountain and to the city and starts knocking on doors at all the chocolatiers trying to get an apprenticeship because she's so desperate for chocolate. Unfortunately for her, being a chocolate apprentice is a very highly lauded job, and none of the chocolatiers really want her because she is not well dressed and she has an attitude because she's a dragon. And so she finally gets to the very last chocolate house, and just as she's arriving there, the chocolatier is kicking the apprentice out the door because this chocolatier has a very fiery temper. And so they fit right together, and the chocolatier is a little desperate to get a new apprentice, so she takes her in. So we follow, obviously, Venturine learning all about how to make great chocolate at this niche chocolate house, and eventually she kind of finds her way to being very good at this job, and she runs through a few problems along the way, but she really finds herself. And I think that's the major theme. So she makes one friend, Silka, who is kind of a street urchin. Her family runs a merchant stall, but she's always out, and she is the streetwise kid that everybody looks to for tips. And Silka also has this same thing of rejecting social roles, where she is explicitly listed as a she/her pronoun girl, but she dresses as a boy. And in the society, it is very repeatedly brought up that people dress a certain way, and Venturine is out of fashion, and it's very leaned on that you have to be socially accepted. But Silka doesn't really care. She likes the way she dresses. It's the easiest for her to get around the city when she dresses as a boy. So she is really encouraging to Venturine about just being herself. So I think overall, at the top level, this is just a simple, really fun, light, fluffy read. But then there are just the little moments that really added to the layers. So I have a couple of quotes that I actually wanted to read that are really, they're just hidden there that are so important to why this was a great read to me. So quote number 1 that I had is, "This was right. This was me. How could I ever have doubted it? And was this really waiting inside me all along?" So just great. Self-acceptance there. And then quote number 2, this is her grandfather, dragon speaking. "Haven't you ever listened to a word I've said? I've always wanted you to find your passion. Now that has finally happened, why would I be cruel enough to pull you away from it? You may have lost your proper shape due to typical human trickery, but you're still our own hatchling to be guarded and cherished." And quote number 3, "It was almost too much happiness to contain, but I was a dragon and a girl, and I was strong enough for all of it. I mean, just, so good. I mean, so this is full of those very simple, tiny moments just layered in there of self-acceptance and empowerment. And like I said, this is mostly just a light and fluffy read, but there's just little perfect things layered in there that I absolutely loved, and would highly recommend it. And it looks like book 2 actually does follow the POV of Silka, so I'm really curious to see more of that from her as well, because she is so outspoken on those topics. So I just love this. It was so feel good and heartwarming, and obviously chocolate and a dragon, you can't go wrong. So that's it for me. I loved both of these books, and I think the more that I have spent time thinking about them, the more I've had to think about and infer in processing them. So I hope you guys look at these and pick them up going forward, and I highly recommend both.